worked for them, but it meant cutting out people's jobs.
Yes. Reginald Brock, who was the CEO of Time Inc. Reg, again, is an extremely ethical man who worries about his people that work for his company. When he became CEO of Time, he felt he had to change the whole culture, because that was a company built on cronyism.
Oh, and WASP.
Very, very WASP. And you had to go to the right schools, you had to have the right family connections. And he decided that the company would drift into mediocrity unless he made the changes where he brought more women in, brought more minorities in. He gave raises based on merit.
That was interesting. He would have 6 or 7 people apply for a job.
Right.
And then it was, who's the best?
Exactly.
Yeah.
When the very first publisher of Life magazine was a woman. And he had 8 or 9 applicants, a number of which came to him and said, look, I was told by the former CEO that when this position came up, I was going to get it.
Yep.
And Reg said, look, I'll put you on the list, I'll interview you, and the best person's going to win. And it was a woman. And when that meeting was over, someone said, Reg, do you know what you just did?
Yeah.
He said, no, what? He said, you appointed a woman to that position. He said, oh, that wasn't even a consideration. And knowing him, it wasn't. It was the best person. And it happened to be the person he chose.
Lovely story is the one about leasing space in department stores for the shoe business.
Yes.
And finally, where they cut off because they have leased it, I guess it was 2 different department stores were going to open in Texas.
Right, in Houston.
He was with the one that the others were against.
Well, Les Sherman, who was the president of Woolshoe, Les had been told by the head of Macy's 6 months before at a dinner that we like you, we love you.
Yeah, for the rest of our lives.
Right, we're going to be with you forever. 6 months later, they opened a store in Texas. And Foley's was one of their, and this was Macy's that opened the store. Yeah. Foley's was a department store they had been with for years. And he felt honor-bound not to open a second store, which upset Macy's, and they gave them notice that they're, in 1 year they were going to take all their 100 stores out, which would have meant 110 stores, which would have meant losing $100 million worth of revenue. He decided with management to open 100 stores, and estimated their volumes would be $1 million per each, and he was successful in accomplishing that. Yeah. Outstanding story.
But he must have had a couple of sleepless nights.
Many.
Yeah.
Many sleepless nights, because when that happens to you, and I haven't quite had that happen to me in business, but when that happens, you know, you can see the demise of your company.
Yeah.
But he was able to overcome that.
The other was the man, McDonald, whose uncle owned, had been one of the founders of McDonnell Douglas.
Right.
And he literally says to you, I had to wait till he died because there was only room for one king.
That's right. The greatest story is that when Sandy McDonald became the CEO, they were having a business meeting. And James McDonald, the founder of the company, was there. And Sandy said, well, I'll take responsibility for this decision because I'm the CEO now. And his uncle said, Sandy, there's something you better understand. You might be the CEO, but I'm still the boss.
Yeah.
And no one had ever explained it to him like that.
But that happens, I think, in many cases, in families where, well, there's the other case, George Herbert Walker Jr.,
George Herbert Walker III.
Yeah, where the father says, no, you stay out of this bank, out of this brokerage business, almost to say you're the dope of the family.
Yes. And that's sad, because that's exactly what did happen to Burt Walker.
Yeah.
Burt Walker never got the chance to run the business. And he eventually went with a company called Stiefel Nicklaus, did a masterful job, became the chairman and CEO, and really grew the company, and it became a public company. Yeah. And then he made the most unselfish decision in business that I've ever heard of. He retired when he really didn't have to. But he in his own head felt that the business was passing him by because of all the technology that was involved, and he wanted to give young people a chance to grow. So he decided to retire, and when he retired, he wasn't the wealthy man that he ended up being because the stock was just starting to move. But he's a very unusual man and never did get credit for the intellect that he had.
Harlan, this group of people, 39 of them, none of them seem to have been involved or on the murky side of the economic drop in 2008.
These people, in my opinion, are the antithesis of what you read about on Wall Street. Mm-hmm. These were honest, honorable people, and each and every one of them, ethics was extremely important to them.
Yeah.
And these people were really, and I don't think it's just this group. I think that most American businessmen are honest, but you read about all the ones that are not.
Yeah, they're more exciting. It's,
right.
Yeah, drama.
And so people relate everything to that. And a lot of very fine businessmen don't get the credit that they're due.
Do you think, Harlan, it's because many of the men you choose and women were from the Midwest? Is there a difference, do you feel, in the culture that they bring?
Well, being from the Midwest, there is a fine culture, but you know, honestly, I did not see that.
Yeah.
I interviewed any number of people from the East Coast, the South, and the West, and I really found that their ethics, their morals were pretty much the same.
Good man, Clarence Barksdale?
Yes. I know him well, and here's a guy who was offered an opportunity to really go with a big bank, decided to stay with a smaller bank because he felt he had an opportunity, but really, he wanted to please his wife.
Yeah.
He wanted to stay in St. Louis because that's where his wife was from and she had her roots. And she was very helpful to him in the bank in their promotional activities. And he really grew that bank from about $500 million to $7 billion when he retired. Yeah. And just, again, a very unusual, ethical man.
He also said in their role, he could buy a $10 million bank and grow, and he would be able at that time to get their loans, to get their income, and it was really a very good way at that time to add on to the bank he had.
And that's what they did. They did a lot of that, particularly in the Midwest.
Yeah.
And, but they also became good at international banking. I mean, they really traveled the world to get business, and they were pretty successful in doing it.
But they always came back to St. Louis.
Came back to St. Louis.
Yeah.
They did.
Tell me, too, about within the drug industry, there's somebody who talks about how they had to really look because Ralph's, Safeway, they were all opening their own drug department and carrying the same type of products. Although I will say the coin is the other side. You can go to a Rite Aid and they are selling canned goods, and so it's a hard, except for fresh produce. What's the difference?
You know, basically the size. I mean, you know, when you look at Ralph's or you look at Vaughn's or these big supermarkets, compared to the size of a drugstore, they can carry a much broader mix. Basically, the strength of the drugstore has been the pharmacy. And in my own case, in my own company, we were really the first drug chain in the country to develop what you call a chemically based drug interaction database, which would allow a pharmacist to notify a doctor if a person was on more than one drug and it could interact adversely. We opened the first healthcare store in a pharmacy. And we started getting very heavily involved in mail order pharmacy.
Yeah, like Medco.
Like a Medco. Well, we started a pharmacy benefit management company called Express Scripts, company that you said you had some stock in.